Hello, hello. It is Soul Sunday at Spirit and Soul Studio, and I am Tiffany Cohen, owner of Spirit and Soul Studio. I love, love, love Soul Sundays because it's a chance for us to just kind of sit back and have a nice little spiritual chat, and also something that you can bring forward with you throughout the week. So, what was really coming through today was about change, changing your life, responding to change, responding to this need for change in your life, or the response to really what it is that you are being asked to do, what it is that your soul is calling you forward on. And this is something that is it's so profound to me and so powerful that once you actually just take one small step towards what it is that you're meant to do in your lifetime, how it opens up so many different timelines, it opens up so many doors. And I read in Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak. You can get this at Spirit and Soul. We talk about it all the time. It's so amazing. And what there was a passage in here that actually really wasn't talking about changing your life. It was talking about changing like the changes coming of the world. But when I read it, because what I'll sometimes do for Soul Sundays is I will choose the book. Lately it's been Bringers of the Dawn, but I'll choose the book and then I'll just like, all right, what does everybody need to know? And I open up the page and boom, there it is. So I'm like, okay, like what was coming through was this really taking the steps towards what is, really your soul is calling out for. But then when I read this passage, I was like, it really does. It's very fitting. So what they say is, remember humanity's destiny to evolve. We guarantee that life as you know it now will not be around 10 years from now. The world as you know it, the reality as you know it, the comforts and projections and vacations and all the things that you do will not be here 10 years from now. You are here for your own personal evolution. How that evolution is going to come about worldwide will be rather interesting. We're not talking about the evolution of a few dozen people. We are talking about the evolution of a species. Oh my gosh. So what this is saying is like there's a mass awakening, and I think that we can understand that and we know that, right? So like there is a mass awakening, and you're probably listening to this right now because at some point, really since 2020, most of us were really starting to awaken. At some point you have really awoken to your what is possible for you, and maybe you don't know what that is yet, and maybe it feels really scary, or sometimes I'll ask clients like, well, what do you love, and they're like, I don't know. Right. And because we get so caught up in our everyday world, we get caught up in work, in our families, in our relationships, in our friendships, and we don't actually take a minute for our own personal growth. We don't take a minute for ourselves and like who we are at our core. And we can lose ourselves in so many different ways and because of so many different things. So you can lose yourself because you went through a trauma. You can lose yourself because you're in a relationship and you've taken on someone else's identity, or you're just like existing in it. You can lose yourself in your children. Same thing, right? Like you're thinking that you have to serve them, but at the same time, you're losing a part of who you are. And you can lose yourself in your work, right? And often while we think that we're striving for success and the next level and all these things, what's actually happening is you're hiding from something else. And it's usually because you can't sit with yourself, right? So, what we want to start doing is really allowing for the personal growth to take place, because when we're on a personal growth journey, we are at the same time usually following our soul, because our souls want us to grow as humans. That's like part of why we're here. So if we're not making the time and space to do that, and we keep saying, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. To me, listening to that, usually that is a cop out. I'm gonna call you out. I'm gonna call you out on a Soul Sunday. Usually it's a cop out because it's the person not really wanting to sit with their feelings, and they don't want to sit with the things about them that either they don't like, that they're questioning, that they're unsure of, that they don't trust, and they'd rather just be busy rather than just grow, right? Work through it and grow through it. And sometimes people don't even know that that's an option. It's just like, well, just going to define myself by my life and the experiences that I've had. And the fact is that's never how it was supposed to be. Just like they say in here, like you're meant to evolve. So if you had something that happened to you that was amazing, or you had something that was, life changing in a traumatic way, understand that wherever that trauma left you is not meant to be where you stay forever. And so many times we get trapped in that. So, what we want to allow ourselves to do, and you know what? I'm even going to say this as well. There is also the happiness thing too. Like sometimes we become so happy, like think about a relationship. We become so happy that we're afraid to change because we think that our happiness will go away. So we just stay put with a smile on our face. And oftentimes everything else around you is changing except for you. And then you're looking backwards at what was instead of what is and what will be. So we have to allow ourselves, even through the, the good stuff, the bad stuff, or what feels bad, through all of those things, we have to allow ourselves to change, and we have to trust that the universe is always going to provide something better on the other side of our growth, and the other side of our own development as humans. So what the book was saying going on, and this is what I really love. It's like you're not meant to evolve alone. And that's truly why Spirit and Soul, it's like one of the reasons why Spirit and Soul exists. And that's because I wanted to create a space where people were empowered by each other, and then they were all growing, right? Like we recognize that we were not alone in this spiritual journey. And for me, it's a spiritual journey. For other places, it may be like a personal growth journey or whatever it is. But obviously, if you're here at Spirit and Soul Studio, it's a spiritual journey, right? So I wanted people to feel empowered through that. And oftentimes, the spiritual journey can feel lonely, or it could feel like you don't know what's like normal or not normal, and it's all normal. Okay. Whatever you're going through. But you don't know what's normal, what's not normal, or just someone to talk to about the things that you see in your meditations, or the crazy dreams that you have, or the experiences, the out of body experiences, the meditative experiences, the downloads and the shadow and all of the things, the connections that you make, right? Like to not have someone to talk about these things with, that's really hard. So Spirit and Soul exists so that you're not alone. And what they go on to say in the next paragraph is that this was written in the 90s, by the way, or the 80s. As we see it, communities are going to be very influential in the 1990s. They will form on tracts of land that will be anywhere from 50 to a few hundred acres, perhaps as small as 25 acres, and they may house anywhere from 30 to 100 people. These groups will come together because the members will be responding to an inner knowing. The new technologies that will be used in the coming communities will be technologies based on love. There's nothing wrong with technology. The major stumbling block of technology now in use on this planet is that it is used to separate, manipulate, and control people rather than to uplift them. Technology with love is the key. So I found this really interesting. So while Spirit and Soul is not built on like 25 acres or 100 acres of land, maybe that's a good dream though to have. Um, while it's not on that, I mean, think about it realistically. There was no like Zoom or anything like that in this time when this was being channeled. So think about how many people we reach. Like it's not on land, it's through energy, right? So think about that, like how many people we reach, and also the physical space that we do have that is available. So this is spirit and soul, but there are places all over that do have 100 acres of land, and they're like these big communes for people that want to live off the grid, or that really want to just live like a simple spiritual life, or whatever it might be. Okay. And these people are coming together in community, because when we come together in community, we actually begin to, number one, we evolve together. I actually read in, it's called The Biology of Belief. I just read it this morning, actually. It's very interesting that this is all coming through. But I read in The Biology of Belief that when you're looking at cells that are together, that are, not just by itself and trying to grow and move, but cells that actually form in like communities, they become smarter. They actually, the cells all together grow, and they become smarter, and they become like able to evolve into something more than what they are now. And it's when they are together that they do this a lot more rapidly. So that, like, thinking of the cells, and he does relate it to humans, and how humans, like, one human is great, but there's, when you come together in groups, that's when you really see the evolvement and the changing. I don't know if evolvement's a word, but we're going to go with it. The evolving and the changing of humanity, of parts of humanity. And it starts with a group, right? And like, I feel like as I'm reading this, I feel really inspired, and I feel really great that I responded to that calling. I responded to my own inner knowing, and recognizing that we needed a community. And the community started virtually at first, right? Like, we were doing this during the pandemic, and now it is virtual, it's in person. We use tools like Instagram. And here's the thing, all of these tools, every single one of them, can be looked at as a way to manipulate, as a way to control, right? Like Instagram, like any social media, anything like that. Absolutely. But when you take the technology, like they're talking about, and you actually use it with love, well, now you're playing on a different field. So you can use these things and not look at them in a bad way, but look at them in a good way, right? Like, look at them as, how can I use this with love? And maybe, and like, the sad part is, like, you see so many hateful comments, like, where you hear people talk about like all these hateful comments on Instagram. And the thing is, like, we don't see that. Like, I don't see that in my Instagram, because I'm always coming at it, looking at it from a place of love. If there are things that randomly show up on my Instagram that I don't like, that make me feel good, I'll report it. Or I'll just, like, do like one of the settings to like get rid of that. Like, that's not my truth. So understand that you can always start to shift the reality, but Instagram is going to show you, and these social media accounts are going to show you things that is vibrating with you in the moment. Okay. And you want to make sure that you're clearing. And the best way to do that is to allow yourself to grow, and then use these technologies with love. Right? Like, use them with love, and show up to them with love, or show up to them like lighthearted. Like, I may show up with love for like supporting people in the DMs or on our posts. But then, like, I'm showing up lighthearted in watching other people's reels and laughing and things like that. And I'm always showing up that way. I'm never looking at like people's like, I'm never looking for people's nasty comments or anything like that, anything. And it shows, because I don't see those things on Instagram. And I know that they exist. I know that they do, but not in my world. So start to remember, this is how you create your reality. Like, start to create this reality. And you do this through your allowing yourself to grow. So what I want you to do today and this week is start to figure out different ways that you can allow yourself to grow this week. And that may be through a podcast. You may be starting this, but I don't want you to consider this your only growth. I want you to do something. I want you to actually take an action. So maybe every time you start to show up to a social media or to anything, even if you're feeling a little not the greatest, I want you to show up differently. I want you to show up with like a different attitude and see how you feel. See what starts to show up a little bit differently on your accounts or how people start to respond to you. So maybe you don't love your work environment. Okay. What about if you started showing up with love rather than, just another day, right? And start to see how people respond to you differently. So that's your homework for this week. I hope that you allow for growth because understand, and also that you allow for growth in a community. So do something for this, you know what? It's going to be part 2 of your homework. Part 1, do something for yourself to grow. Part 2, do something in community. So that may be as simple as a free thing you could do is join our Instagram live sales. You don't have to buy anything, but I know that it's hard to not because we have amazing things. But join that. We laugh, we crack up laughing. Sometimes we do healings, we talk about crystals you're learning, and this is the whole thing about this Instagram live group is that they have formed a community themselves and they support each other. And it's so, so, so great. So do something like that. And also, you could come to a spirit and soul class, right? Do something that's a group. Maybe go for like my dad is part of like a hiking group. Like maybe do a hiking group if like you feel like nature is healing for you. Do something in a group that allows for personal growth. All right. So I hope that you have an incredible week and I'll see you next week for next week's Soul Sunday.